Welcome to the EchoCast. I am Bon, and this week we'll be talking about a Mass Effect giveaway, Raven Software unionizing, Star Wars Jedi Survivor revealed, replacement E3 details, and more. A few things before we get into the show. Please subscribe to the show if you are on Spotify or iTunes. Please rate the podcast. On YouTube, please subscribe to the channel, like this video, and hit the bell icon in order to be notified of other videos. Last, please join the show's Discord by clicking on the link in the description of the podcast or in the video. Gaming news. Mass Effect N7 helmet giveaway. Due to people using my BioWare Gear Store discount code, I was able to get enough commission off of that I purchased one of the 1-to-1 replica N7 helmets that Shepard wears in the trilogy, and I'm gonna give it away. These things were $130. They're currently on sale, and then I am just gonna give one away. I do have one coming for myself, just for full clarity. So, just so you know, my current code, if you want something off of the BioWare gift shop store, is BW Goals, BWGOALS. That will have to change every week. So if you keep an eye on either my Twitter, or if you just DM me either on Twitter, or if you get into my Discord and ask, I can make a new code and send it to you for 20% off anything on there. It's pretty dope. As for details of this helmet giveaway, keep an eye on my Twitter, either at Bon Diesel or at the EchoCast. I'm still trying to decide how I'm going to do the giveaway. I've used websites like GiveLab before, and some other Gleam and stuff like that. A lot of people don't like giving their info to these places because literally they collect your email and your name and stuff and send it off to advertisers. So I'm going to look and see if there's a better option for doing this giveaway. So keep an eye out for that, and I will even do my best to remember. If you keep an eye on this video down in the comments, I will post details. If you also sub to the channel, I will also post in the community tab when the giveaway starts and how to do it. So keep an eye out for that. Into actual news, and not my own little giveaway there, we have Raven Software has unionized. So this is a studio that is underneath Activision. It's a relatively small studio. I don't think at least it's the QA team specifically that has unionized. And so this puts gaming into a weird spot. This is, as far as I know, the first studio under the umbrella of like one of the major publishers to unionize, especially in the United States. And it may be the first gaming studio that has unionized. And it puts us in kind of a precarious position. So Activision, Blizzard is kind of, turning their nose up at it and being predictably weird about it. Phil Spencer has already come out with Xbox saying if that acquisition goes through, they'll respect the union. That's like kind of an assumed statement, because it's Xbox wouldn't have a choice. They can't just say no to the union, and they can't fire them and stuff like that. That's just not how it works. And so now there's kind of this question of, is this going to set off a windfall, a domino effect, and are we going to start seeing more and more studios do this? I believe there was talk not long ago that a BioWare studio, one of their QA teams, was trying to put together a unionizing thing and all that. So I'm going to be straight up. I don't know a ton about unions and all that. I've never been a member of one. A lot of my friends have been through the trades, or there's a local grocery store chain that has, it's national grocery store chain, that all of the employees are unionized, and it seems like it comes with its ups and downs, but the ups specifically when it comes to pay and treatment and promotions and things like that for the gaming world might be a thing that might be needed and might be good for them. Obviously, not every union is built the same and is as effective as every other one, but you can hope that in with as much focus as there is nowadays on crunch and wellness and treating employees with respect and just all of those things, I hope that at least in some capacity, this works. And the two ways it can work is that a bunch of the major studios and minor studios do unionize. They may even create unions just for gaming devs in general and not per studio, kind of like the writers guilds and stuff like that. Or that the pressure or the threat of a union presses publishers to do things that would make their employees not want to unionize. The problem is that is the type of thing that gets promised year over year of, hey, you guys don't need to unionize, we'll increase your pay, we'll get rid of crunch and blah blah blah. But because there's no union and because the publishers are essentially all powerful, they might do it for a minute and then they turn around and and things go back to the way they were. So I'll be really curious to follow the story and see if this was like the first domino or if it was kind of a fart in the wind. I don't know. I know a lot of people who work at a lot of different studios, big and large, and other and various large studios, and the treatment that you hear about just varies so much, even under the same publisher with different studios. So we'll have to see. I am curious about this and where it goes. This is a story that just broke not long ago. I'm recording this on Friday. I believe it's the 27th. And Star Wars Jedi Survivor has been announced, and it has a very vague date of 2023. A few of the small details we have is that Cal Kestis will return as the protagonist. This is a true sequel to Fallen Order. And we did get a short teaser trailer that at the end shows someone in like a tank, like a healing tank, where everything around it is all decrepit and grown over. So I don't know if this is supposed to be like an ancient Jedi, or as far as I know, even fans of the game don't seem to be saying like, oh, that's so and so. And so I guess we'll have to wait and find out, who this person is. Fallen Order was a weird game for me because it's a game that I bought it. Subsequently, I returned it and got my money back because it's a Souls-ish game, like Dark Souls, but not really, but enough that it wasn't really my thing. And I liked it. It was pretty. The story that I did get was great. It just wasn't my type of game. But as happens fairly often, I still ended up watching videos of playthroughs and kind of lore summaries and story summaries about it, and it's cool. It's really interesting, especially because of the time frame that it takes place. I believe it's between movies 6 and 7 is when this takes place. I think, and that's cool. I think that's interesting. Actually, no, it wouldn't be, because Vader is in it. And so it would have to be, is it before 3 that it takes, or before 4? I don't know. Someone in the comments of YouTube can clarify for me. After I record, I'm going to end up looking it up because now I feel dumb. But either way, what is exciting about this for me is that this is EA allowing Respawn, which is like, I think, one of the best studios making games. Titanfall 1 and especially Titanfall 2 are just bangers. Apex is the best BR, and it would take something pretty convincing to convince me otherwise. Apex is, I only play it like for like a week every 2 or 3 months, but I always have so much fun with it, and I played it a lot when it came out, and so it hasn't caught my interest a lot since then. But whenever a new season comes out, it's so fun. It's such a good feeling game. Obviously, Fallen Order was great, and yeah, I think this is exciting because if you are someone, EA is in a weird spot. Like they still have a lot of their old criticisms, especially with their sports games, of rehashing and the loot boxes and stuff like that. And then on the other side, they just like Ubisoft and other studios and publishers tried for a while there to make everything a live service game and everything open world and everything, and we saw games like Andromeda and Anthem and stuff like that fail, and we saw them take like Dragon Age and turn it from one of those games back into a normal single player. And then we have a game like Survivor coming out, and we had a game like Fallen Order come out. And so we see them seemingly allowing these studios to just make single player games again, where years ago they were a big proponent against, saying, oh, single player games don't do it anymore, we need multiplayer, we need live service, we need all this. And so if you're someone looking forward to Dragon Age 4, if you're someone looking forward to the next Mass Effect, if you're someone looking forward to any EA property that isn't a multiplayer game, there may be some hope, maybe like a Medal of Honor or things like that, where we may be seeing EA be willing to not require, the multiplayer, the live service. And, a game like Fallen Order really rewarded them for allowing Respawn to do that. So hopefully we'll see that with other games, and other studios and other IP and stuff like that from EA. And then it might get real crazy, and we might see other publishers get brave and start doing that stuff as well, and not feeling like every game needs a battle pass, not every game needs to be free to play, not every game needs multiplayer or PvP. So even if Survivor isn't a game, I'm sure I'll buy it and then I'll probably return it because it probably won't be my thing. But it's the type of game that will lead to other games that I think myself and a lot of other people will be excited about. So how exciting. Death Stranding 2 possibly leaked. This may have been a story last week, but I don't think I covered it. Oh, and of course I'm not going to remember his name now that I'm live and I didn't type it. But Daryl from The Walking Dead, who also played the main protagonist of Death Stranding, in an interview basically just blurted out like, yeah, we're recording for the second one. And so there were lots of news breaks and memes and stuff like that made about it. Apparently he leaked the first game too. I didn't know that, on accident. And I think even Kojima posted something on Twitter, like kind of making, like, poking fun. It's hard to tell if this is really a leak of Death Stranding 2 or not. It wouldn't be unlikely that a Death Stranding 2 is happening. The first game came out a few years ago. They do have the director's cut coming, or it's already out. I can't remember. That adds some stuff. But there is also a thing to think about. There's this, all of the talk about Kojima has been that he's in talks with Xbox to do a cloud game of some type. And I think a lot of people have been like, oh, that's what he's working on. From reporting from like Jeff Grubb and people like that, it sounds like that deal isn't even like fully negotiated and finalized yet. So they are definitely not working on that game. They aren't going to work on it until they know they have a publisher, right? So it's very possible that he has his studio working on Death Stranding 2 right now. And even if that deal with Xbox has gone through or goes through soon, they would just start pre-production on that with probably a fairly small team. And I'm sure Kojima is always probably a huge part of pre-production in his games. But it's definitely possible that they're working on a Death Stranding 2. It's also possible that old Daryl doesn't know much about video games, and maybe he is referring to a different game that he's doing VO for, maybe even with Kojima, or maybe he was talking about stuff they did for Death Stranding, or the director's cut. It's hard to tell. You can definitely tell which actors and stuff like are really like know their stuff, or in the ones who just got called up and their agent, or in this case, I guess Guillermo del Toro basically told Daryl to not be an asshole. I keep saying Revis. Oh, it was almost there. Basically told him like, hey, Kojima's going to call you, just say yes. And then that led to Death Stranding. It was originally going to be Silent Hill and PT, but that changed because Konami's dumb and took away great Metal Gear Solid games and probably a Silent Hill game from us. But here we are. I have kind of a block here of some stuff that's upcoming. This is my replacement E3 section. Just today, it was announced that Sony will have a state of play on June 2nd. So they definitely are trying to undercut, to a point, even Summer Games Fest, but especially Xbox and Bethesda's game showcase. So the Sony show, I believe they said it's only going to be like a half hour, and it's going to be third-party games and PS VR2 games. I'm not a big VR person. I think it's cool that Sony is trying, or is at least willing to invest to try to make it a little bit more mainstream. I think it's a huge waste of money. But I've heard some people give praise the PSVR, not so much because of its quality, but more so because of its accessibleness price wise. Whereas like Oculus and these other ones are not so approachable. The more interesting part of this is the third party part of this. There's a lot of people I've seen already talking about like, oh, it's gonna be Final Fantasy 16. Probably some more details about the Final Fantasy 7, I think it is, remake, but it's probably going to be some kind of reveal of Final Fantasy 16, which is the next big entry into that series, which I don't know if it polls the same as it did many years ago, but it probably does, even if it doesn't here in the States. So that's exciting. There's rumblings that they may like have a quick teaser of Ragnarok, God of War, or something like that. Cory Barlog said something alluding to that game is coming along and that they are still expecting, or that people are interpreting that the game is still expected this year. I mean, we're almost halfway through the year, whether you believe it or not. It's almost June, which at the end of the month will be halfway through the year, which is hard to believe, but we'll see. I'm still skeptical that we see God of War this year. I don't know. I'm curious. I think I covered it last week, but I think because of the other delays, they may see an opportunity that like, can we polish it just that much more? That said, if you ever ask a game dev, how long would you need to make a game perfect? They would say forever. So at some point, someone has to push these games out the door. And if they're done, they're done. And we may see that with Ragnarok this year. The next show is going to be a week later. And that's going to be Jeff Keighley's Summer Games Fest on June 9th. That is probably going to be an interesting smattering of all kinds of stuff. From what I've seen, people are expecting probably some pretty big Sony. This may be where we see God of War Ragnarok. Some Sony titles may show up here. We may see something from like the multiplayer of the Last of Us and stuff like that. We'll also probably see some stuff from Nintendo and Xbox. It is worth considering that Xbox has their own show 3 days later. So if we get anything Xbox at the Summer Games Fest, it's probably just going to be like little teasers. Because I believe the Xbox show is going to be an hour and a half. It's Xbox and Bethesda. So, they have a lot of stuff to put in there, but that's a long show. So I can't imagine there's going to be too much Xbox at the Summer Games Fest. We'll probably see some Nintendo, and we're probably going to see a ton of third party. Jeff Keighley, in the last week, I think even tweeted out like, hey, he's kind of like the ringleader for a lot of it seems like a lot of even third-party publishers kind of coordinate with him a little bit to try to make sure their things and are spread out, and he has even come out and said like, hey, don't expect a lot of third-party shows this year. So the main one I think of there is like Ubisoft. We've heard nothing about an Ubisoft Connect. Ubisoft's in a weird spot, and I'm going to talk about this more in the next section. But they theoretically have a bunch of like relatively large games coming. But like they just put out Roller Champions, which is fine, but it's not like a big deal. It's going to be dead in a week. And so we very well may see Ubisoft at the Summer Games Fest, as well as a bunch of other studios. I think that Summer Games Fest will probably end up being the most exciting show because I think it's going to have the most variety. And then 3 days later, we have the Xbox Bethesda Game Showcase on June 12th. So this one's in a weird spot, right? Because we were expecting for this to be Starfield's big coming out party. Probably an announcement of like, in theory, Redfall was probably supposed to come out, within a month or so after this show. It's delayed till next year, just like Starfield. And so it's going to be kind of interesting what Xbox brings to the table. This year, we are still expecting Forza 8. So I would expect to see that. I think we will still see Starfield. We'll still get a big featurette there. Redfall, I don't know. I have no idea. And then there's other games like the next Hellblade game, which I think is coming next year. I would expect to see something fairly significant from that. I believe it was at the Game Awards last year where we saw that in-engine trailer and I guess gameplay that was really impressive and really exciting. We'll see. I really I am curious. We'll see if maybe we see something from Fable, whether Everwild is still a thing or not from Rare. Maybe Avowed. I think we may see something from that. I don't know. I'm curious. I'm curious to what they're gonna do. I do expect to see a couple big third-party announcements during the Xbox show for Game Pass day ones. I think we could see something. Some of the predictions I've seen some people predicting the next Call of Duty might be. I highly doubt that. That Call of Duty game has ad deals with Sony, which typically keep them from doing that specifically. With them doing that acquisition negotiations for doing something like that, I think would be kind of weird. So we'll have to wait and see. But I don't know. I think it's going to be really interesting to see what Xbox tries to do to kind of fill in the second half of this year. Because losing Starfield especially, which was a game that a lot of people were thinking could in theory compete for Game of the Year. This guy, pointing at myself, thought that was going to be a conversation that was probably likely. I think Forza 8 will probably do well. I think it's going to ride off of how well Horizon was reviewed and enjoyed, and I think it will. I think a Forza 8 would probably do well, but it's not going to be the banger that people are expecting. And we'll see, man. Either way, I'm excited for all three of these shows, even the Sony show, even though it's not really my thing. It's just fun to see new stuff, man. I will say at the Summer Games Fest, I do think we will see Dragon Age 4 from BioWare. That game I would think is coming in the next a little bit more than a year, probably next summer 2023 or fall or even winter maybe. And I think we've gotten one trailer for that game. So due to my newfound BioWare enjoyment through Mass Effect, I'm not a huge Dragon Age fan, but if they put out something new, I'll play it. So that's where we're at. I spoke about Ubisoft before, so there's continued Ubisoft acquisition rumors. Ubisoft's in a weird spot, so there's been talk of them, potentially talking to other platforms. I've even seen rumors of them like potentially trying to do like a partner deal with like EA or something, where they kind of remain two separate companies, but they have some type of deal between them. I don't know. Ubisoft is in a weird spot because Ubisoft isn't really. I'm curious to how attractive they are as a studio right now, or as a publisher, because they have games and they have a lot of IP, and they have games like Siege and Assassin's Creed that do very well, but seem like they're kind of in like a creative plateau, right? Now there are rumors there's a new Assassin's Creed coming out that's going to kind of go back to the roots of the franchise. We'll see if that's true. That's kind of hard to believe because Valhalla and Odyssey did so well, and Ubisoft games sell really well. It's a really bizarre thing that even as a fan of some of their franchises, I kind of have a negative outlook on Ubisoft right now, but they sell, man. They just sell games, and they do it prolifically. Even games that I think you could describe as being like not very good games, they still sell a ton of them. And it's so weird. They like support games in a really weird way. Like, myself, I'm a big Division 2 fan, and you see the Division 2 community and even like the devs like begging to be able to support that game fully the way it should be, and it just has never happened. But then you see games like The Crew 2 get its like 5th year of content, and that game's awful. The Crew 2 is a bad video game. I'm just gonna be honest. And like Roller Champions is probably gonna get like 6 years of content, and Roller Champions is neat, but it's not good. And so I don't know. Ubisoft's weird, and I saw some kind of chatter about Ubisoft and that they're a weird acquisition because they have a ton of really valuable IP, both active and inactive. I mean, you're talking about like Prince of Persia and like Splinter Cell and stuff like that, games that that they are like supposedly doing like remakes of, but they aren't actually utilizing, right? And so in one way, Ubisoft would be a really attractive acquisition, right? But they have so many studios and so many employees. I've seen chatter that like they may have to consolidate a lot to be an attractive buy. And so half of you says like, well, like, they aren't gonna want to shut down a bunch of studios and fire a bunch of people because that is friggin' awful, and that's probably not the press they need right now. And I don't know, I know a bunch of those people, and I want them to be safe and secure and happy. And so you would think that they wouldn't do that because that isn't what Ubisoft is. But who knows how long Yves Guillemot wants to keep working. And like I said, I think last week or the week before, he's the last family member in the executive team of this game, of this publisher. And it's a family business still, like technically. And so he's not young. And so I've said for a while that I think he may sell just to cash out and go buy a big old boat and never touch land again, And if that is what he's going to do, who's to say he wouldn't sell it off to some, third party that would, do all the paring down and then sell off the remains of the publisher and the IP and everything and the remaining studios to some, to a Sony, to an Xbox, to a Tencent, to whoever would buy it. And so I think Ubisoft's in a weird spot, and I'll be really curious to see what happens to them in the long run. It would be really interesting. I think a lot of Division fans, which I know are a large part of my listenership here. I've seen so many people be like, "Oh, I want Massive to be its own studio or to get picked up by so and so," and it's just like, I don't think that is going to happen. But if they consolidate and they cut studios, it sure seems like Massive is considered one of their top tier studios. But these things are weird, and I'd be curious to what some Massive employees would think about being independent or being sold off to another publisher. Something tells me with all of the issues people have with Ubisoft, people also don't like change. So we'll see. It's a story to keep an eye on. I think within the next year or two, Ubisoft will have new ownership of some type. We can cross our fingers and hope for the best. We had Sniper Elite 5 come out this week. This is a game I've played like a half hour. I really liked what I've played so far. It looks great. It plays well. it's just like a big sandbox game in a big way. It's almost goofy, but it does take itself seriously. Its Metacritic score is 77, which honestly surprised me because every review I've seen or every commentary I've heard on podcasts and stuff is really glowing on this game, especially its co-op and all of its fun little features. And so I was really expecting its Metacritic to be at least in the 80s, but when I looked at it, it looks like there's a couple scores dragging it down. I will be curious to look at the Metacritic again like next week, because there were only 12 reviews being counted when I saw it before. I suspect that will double or triple, and I bet that will pull. I wouldn't be surprised if it ends up in like the low 80s. And from what I've played so far and seen, I think that seems fair. So if you have Game Pass, it is a day one exclusive, which is pretty crazy, and really exciting. So if you have Game Pass, I believe it's on PC and Xbox. Check it out and play it. If you're on PlayStation, I mean, that money, that putting that money down is definitely a important decision and a decision for you to make. But I've been impressed with it. I thought it was a lot of fun. So I do recommend Sniper Elite 5. And then the last story bit here is The Witcher 4 has entered pre-production. CDPR has announced this officially. So that right now puts CDPR doing DLC for Cyberpunk. I'm really curious to how extensive that is. I'm sure they still have a sizable team working on that game. But The Witcher 4 is switching to Unreal Engine 5 from their Red Engine. And I'm sure they'll be able to reuse assets and upscale them and do some stuff from their own engine to this. But, putting this next game, even if it's 4 or 5 years away, onto a new engine is going to be a ton of work. And it really makes me question how long they're going to let devs work on Cyberpunk when their true success, their golden stallion, The Witcher, is gonna need that attention sooner than later. And so Cyberpunk, I think they'll do some cool stuff. I think they'll put out some DLC for it, but I think that will wrap up fairly quickly, because basically starting this from scratch on a new engine, that's not really how it works, but let's just say it is. That's going to be a big deal, and they'll need their entire studio behind it, or whoever isn't working on the card game. So something to keep an eye on. But officially entering pre-production is a cool thing to know. It doesn't mean a whole lot. Some games have pre-productions that last for like a year and a half, and some have them that last for many years. So since it's a sequel, it will probably be on the faster side, but you want a good pre-production. I've said it before, but I think if you look back at games that AAA games that did well and that didn't, when you dig into the stories a bit, I feel like a lot of times the good games had a really good pre-production and a very clear vision that they stuck with through production, and games that suffer don't. We hear about games like Andromeda and Anthem that were just a mess. Even in production, they were flipping things and redoing things completely. Even a game like Halo Infinite, which I really enjoyed, it sounds like it was intended to be something different than it is. A game like Battlefield 2042, which at this point, I completely believe the conspiracy that was straight up a BR game. That last minute-ish, in the last 6 to 9 months, they decided to try to make a traditional Battlefield game, and you see the fingerprints of that all over that game. Plus, that BR mode they did kind of include that was god-awful. It was terrible. So, you don't want pre-production to be rushed. So Witcher 4, take your time, especially after Cyberpunk. And those are the news stories for this week. I'm going to jump into some listener questions. If you have listener questions or topics you would like for me to cover in the next show, you can drop them to me on Twitter, on the Discord, in the YouTube comments. There's all kinds of places to check out and give me some ideas. So the questions this week come from Master Prime on Discord. Would you play the Call of Duty 22 if it turns out to be a sequel to Modern Warfare 2019. Yeah, I believe I talked about that last week a little bit. These questions were from last week, but Master Prime was like an hour late, but after I recorded the episode. Oh yeah, I mean that's the only Call of Duty I will play. So I really enjoyed the 2019 Modern Warfare kind of prequel, reboot, whatever it is. And I was very happy with that story. I thought it was a lot of fun. I know there was some controversy in it. I think that's been played up a little too much and kind of misinterpreted on purpose. But it also was kind of tone deaf. So I get it. I get both sides of that. But I really enjoyed that story. It was a thriller, man. They make great single player games and campaigns. The multiplayer I really enjoyed, but the problem is that Warzone has siphoned off so much of the excitement from Call of Duty multiplayer that I played it for like a week or two and then dropped off and played some Warzone, but then that got boring. Now supposedly like Warzone 2.0 is coming with this as well, and I've seen rumors that it actually may kind of go back to was it Drop Zone or whatever the first iteration of their BR mode was, that I actually much preferred over Warzone. And so if that happens, I'll be much more interested. But yeah, no, I'm super excited for this next Call of Duty. And now we've had it confirmed on Twitter through Call of Duty that it is the next Modern Warfare game, and I'm in for sure. And then Master Prime's second question is, would you play a horror game on live stream? Yeah, that would be interesting because I hate horror games. I am not into that. That is not my deal. So I have thought about the Dead Space remake that I believe is going to come out. I think they delayed it to early next year. I definitely would love to play that on stream. Just for some hilarity. I'm a big scaredy cat, and that original game I played a little bit of, but it was just too intense for me. I couldn't do it. So yeah, I would be willing to do that, but it will not be my favorite. So and that's the question. So if you have any for next week, be sure to ask in the various places I suggested. As for content updates, today, the 27th, signifies the last school day for my wife's school. She is a teacher. What that means for me is that where for the school year, I have, especially during COVID, have had the house to myself during the week because I'm still working from home 3 or 4 days a week. And so if a big news thing popped up, I could stop for an hour and just make a video real quick and post it. Or I could stream, or, there's stuff like that I might still be able to do. I plan on live streaming the Summer Games Fest and the Xbox show and things like that. But it just may mean that my content, may be more consistent in some ways and less in others. So please be patient with that. I'm gonna take a vacation at some point. We very well may miss a week of the podcast. I don't think we will, but it could happen, especially if we go for like a whole weekend or something. I'm not gonna stress over one episode. Right now, the 200th episode is going to happen on August 26th if I don't miss a week. I've been reaching out to some developers, and I'm trying to get a hold of some people. If anyone who listens to this knows BioWare developers, anyone who would want to be on the show and would let me pick their brain, please let me know. Message me in some capacity. But my hope is to put together 2 or 3 shows leading up to the 200th. To just kind of celebrate a little bit, because doing 200 episodes of a pretty much entirely solo podcast is not easy. There's lots of great podcasts that haven't made it to 50. And so I'm really proud that this one is heading on its way to 200 and beyond. And, I'm trying to find small ways to continue to try to improve and things like that. So there we go. The last bit here is last week I talked about I was going to do some updates on some weight loss stuff, especially if anyone wants to join me and kind of have someone to check in with. I started my couch to 5K program this week, which is basically going from not moving much at all to doing a 5K within like a month and a half or 2 months. And so I've done my first 2 runs, and they've gone better than I expected. I'm still slow as molasses. I have been joking that I'm not really running, but I'm walking with haste. But so far, so good. And I've lost like 5 pounds in a week. Now that's water weight. That's a lot of fluctuation. I'm, pretty big. I'm pretty heavy. And so I can lose probably 15 or 20 pounds pretty quickly, pretty safely. But then I'll hit a wall, and that's kind of, we'll deal with that when we get there. But yeah, so if you're looking to cut a few pounds this summer as well, feel free to jump into the Discord or something. If it justifies making like a weight loss room or like a support room in my Discord or something, I will do that. You just need to let me know. So that's what I have for this week. It's a little bit shorter of a show than recently, but it's all good. We'll have much to talk about in June. So, don't fret. I also will say to my fellow Americans, happy Memorial Day weekend. It should be a long weekend for most of us, and be safe, be smart, and be thoughtful of the people impacted by a bunch of tragedies in the last couple weeks, especially a few days ago down there in Texas. So pretty awful stuff. But yeah. Thank you for checking out the podcast. If you want more, be sure to like this video. If you're on YouTube, subscribe to the channel on any platform, be notified of new videos by hitting the bell on YouTube, and maybe check out some of my other content. You can find me all over the internet as Bond Diesel, including on Twitter, YouTube, and Twitch. Please check out my The EchoCast and Bond Diesel merch at the link in the description and on my Twitter. That's all I have. So until next time.